2024 was a great year for the stock market, but could 2025 be even better? Here to talk about the year in review and a look ahead at what investors can expect in the new year is MarketBeat analyst Chris Markoch. Chris, how is 2024 coming to a close for the market?
Even with the slight pullback that we're seeing here in these last few trading days of the year, the S&P 500 is still up about 23% for the year. The Dow and the Nasdaq are both positive. So it's been a good year for stocks despite this volatility that we're seeing at the end of the year.
What were some of the reasons for all of the growth in 2024?
What it really came down to, as far as I was concerned, is it came down to earnings growth. Companies in 2023 reacted to the interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve, and they made tactical decisions such as layoffs and other cost cutting measures. And so many companies beat earnings estimates for the year. The companies that beat their earnings estimates, their stocks generally went up. The stocks that didn't beat their earning estimates, their stocks generally were flat or went slightly down.
Well, two industries in particular had a really great 2024.
Right.
One, of course, AI, the
Right.
other, the GLP-1s.
AI performed in 2024 a lot like it did in 2023. Investors were a little bit more selective about these stocks, but still generally anything that had an AI theme associated to it did very well. And as far as the GLP-1 drugs, we've seen a little bit of weakness kind of coming towards the end of the year as analysts are starting to look at the data that these companies are putting out on how effective these drugs are. You're starting to see maybe a clear leader in Eli Lilly, but Novo Nordisk is still a strong contender in this category. And the reason why I think that still might be a strong sector going into 2025 is that you still see a lot of these biopharma companies making commitments to have GLP-1 drugs on the market. So certainly they don't think this market's going away.
Well, that's a look back at 2024, which
Yeah.
again, a very strong year for the market. But
Mhm.
many analysts are expecting 2025 to be perhaps an even
Yeah.
stronger year for investors.
Since 1926, the S&P 500 has delivered a positive return 73% of the time. So that basically tells you three-quarters of the time you can bet that the S&P 500 is going to have a positive year. And over that time, the index delivered a double-digit return 60% of the time. So again, just based on that probability, you would think the market's probably going to have a pretty good year next year. But that math is also supported by the trend in the macroeconomic environment. And that is instead of seeing inflation tick higher, you're seeing the rate of inflation, generally speaking, moving lower, and you're seeing interest rates move lower, although maybe not as fast as some investors would like.
There's some indicators, and some analysts are expecting maybe inflation and the economic factors to even improve more with a new administration starting next year.
We don't know specifically what the policies from the Trump administration are going to be, but we do have the broad strokes. And the broad strokes is going to be lowering corporate taxes, which would be bullish for stocks. They're going to be pushing for less regulation, which will be bullish for stocks and also potentially for M&A activity. And you've also got this Doge committee, which is again, we don't exactly know what the specifics of that committee are going to be, but any steps that could be taken to reduce government spending would be bullish for stocks.
Yeah, Chris, you've put together a list of 4 sectors you expect to take off in 2025. Before we get to your list, take a look at this free report that lists 10 specific stocks expected to take off in 2025. Scan the QR code or check out the link in the description to take a look at that free report on 10 stocks expected to take off in 2025. Now, Chris, let's get to your list of 4 sectors you expect to see a lot of growth this year.
So, not surprisingly, technology stocks are going to, I think, still be very strong in 2025. AI is going to remain a hot theme, although we may be starting to see a transition more into what I call AI 2.0, and that is you're going to start seeing it move maybe a little bit away from the hardware side, like NVIDIA, and towards the software side to companies that can actually show how to monetize AI. However, I also do think this is going to be a strong year for semiconductors because the build out of AI is still happening in terms of data centers and just companies needing the hardware to do their own AI applications.
Speaking of AI build outs, I think that's
Yeah.
another sector that you said to watch for, and that's what it takes to run those centers.
Utility stocks tend to be pretty boring investments for a lot of investors. 2025 can be an exception to that because we're going to need a lot of power for these data centers, and that's just one reason to believe, in addition to updating our own electrical grid and other factors, that 2025 could be a strong year for utility stocks.
What are some other sectors that you're looking ahead for in 2025?
Two other picks would be industrials. Now, this is one that has a little bit of nuance to it because much of the infrastructure spending has gone out from the infrastructure bill signed in 2022, I believe. However, there are contracts that are in place and that those contracts run through 2025. So even though there might be a push to curb government spending, some of that money is contractually obligated, I believe. So I think 2025 is still going to be a good year for some of those industrial companies that are tasked with rebuilding our nation's infrastructure. So that might be one area for investors to look. And another area would be energy. The Trump administration has made US energy independence a priority. We talked about it being a strong sector in 2024. That didn't work out that way, but I believe in 2025, oil stocks, energy stocks in general are going to be a strong part of the trade.
Well, some good information for
Yeah.
people to think about as they look towards their investment plans for 2025 and looking back at celebrating a good year in 2024. Thanks again for your time, Chris. And we are hoping that all of you have a wonderful year in the stock market coming up in 2025. Thanks again for joining us here on Market Beat. We hope you'll stick with us throughout the new year as well. As always, happy investing.